Welcome, everybody. I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to tell you about how a broken toaster made me happy and could possibly make you happy. So, when I grew up, owning stuff is extremely important. My parents come from a very poor background, and in their mindset, owning stuff like chairs and televisions and computers provided them with status and their identity and a feeling of belonging with the community that we lived in. So instead of going out for dinner, we would save all the money and then buy new clothes or cabins or anything they like. And within the community I grew up in, everybody was doing the same thing. So by the time I was 16 and I was going to university, my life had been furbished by 3 sets of chairs, 2 tables, a couple of televisions, numerous phones, and a gazillion colors of walls, because I quickly found out that painting is a cheap way to adhere to fashion. And even though I love rainbows, it had never made me happy. And when you go to university, you have this idea that you have to make a decision for the rest of your life. What will make you happy? And I had no idea. So I started off with 3 simple questions from what I knew, the consumer culture. And these 3 questions are, where do all these products come from that we buy? Where do they go once we throw them away? Because we threw away perfectly fine materials. And why do people think it's so important to buy and own stuff? And the answer to the first 2 questions is going to involve some statistics. And I know I'm not Hans Rosling, but please bear with me. So the first question, where do these products come from? I found out that we've extracted so many resources from the earth, metals, minerals, anything, that the largest stock of resources does not reside in the ground anymore. It resides in our built environment. So in our houses, in our infrastructure, in all the consumer products that we use. And the demand for these resources is increasing rapidly. We're going towards 3 billion more middle-class consumers in 2030, and they all want an equally prosperous life as we have. So the demand, on average, rises with 183%. But for specific metals and minerals, like dysprosium, I'm sure you've never heard of it, if we use it in hybrid cars and lasers, the demand is going up with 2,600%. It's crazy. So besides that demand is going through the roof, we're heading towards scarcity. The United States Geological Survey estimated that within a time frame of 10 to 50 years, 22 metals and minerals will become scarce. They won't be available anymore. And besides that we actually just dig them out of the ground and they're not there anymore, they're not equally distributed around the world either. So Europe is 100% import dependent from other countries for 35 metals and minerals, including the 22 I mentioned before, and we use them for our infrastructure, telecommunications, medical equipment, energy generation, so they're vital. We cannot live without them. And of one group that's on there, rare earth elements, China owns 97%. That's almost everything there is in the world. And in 2010, they put in place export restrictions. And 40% of European industry was affected. And that meant price spikes of 250%. It meant layoffs of people, supply shortages. And when that special chair that you ordered arrives late, it's inconvenient. But when you're all of a sudden stuck with an ill-equipped hospital due to supply shortages, it's a very different story. Maybe we're doing something useful with it once we throw them away, because we threw away perfectly fine stuff. We don't. It actually ends up like this, trash. In Europe, we recycle 35% of our materials, or of the municipal waste. In the Netherlands, it's a little bit higher, but it's because we frame recycling differently. We say that energy recovery means recycling. But from a resources perspective, you just burn everything, so it's not recycling at all. But back to the municipal waste. It consists mainly of things like glass and plastic and food waste. But that group of metals and minerals that I just talked about, rare earth elements, we recycle less than 1% worldwide. Less than 1%. It's almost nothing. And besides that we waste all these resources, We waste a lot of time and money and energy. And I'll give you an example about that. So if you mine 1 gram of gold, you need to extract 5,000 kilograms of virgin ore. 5,000. Whereas if you'd mine 5 kilograms of mobile phones, you'd also have the 1 gram of gold. And at the moment, we do not do that. So that's a shame. And besides that, I investigated. We throw away annually, only of 4 metals and minerals, 110 billion US dollars. Unbelievable. So besides that, I was just astounded by the numbers that our economy could produce. I didn't even get to my third question. Why do people think it's so important to buy and own all this stuff? So I decided to ask my parents, who else to ask. And my mom said, yeah, it makes me happy. And I think it's very short-lived happiness, because then they save ages, and they buy this fancy new television, and then the neighbors see that. And 2 months later, the neighbors have a better television with like more functions, and the whole thing starts all over again. And I think this is where it goes wrong, because we live in a paradigm where human needs are addressed by buying stuff. We see it as status, and status leads to success. And everybody's insecure about themselves, about their lives, but instead of addressing these insecurities, we just muffle them away behind a fence of stuff. And I think that's where we confuse desires and needs. Because everybody here has a need for love, for belonging, for compassion, for help with questions about life and that. And we confuse them for desires. So we satisfy them with buying consumer goods that don't answer these questions at all. And above all, wealth is not an absolute thing. So as my parents finally bought this great television, all of a sudden the neighbors had one as well, and the net gains on happiness was 0. So I started thinking, after all these questions, what do I do? What makes me happy? It were not the new clothes. It were not the new shoes. It was not the color of the wall, not at all. It were those moments where I was eating an Italian dinner with friends in a candlelit room. It was the moment that I got a massage after working for weeks behind a computer and we finally finished the project. It was the moment that I got up the mountaintop and saw the view. That is what made me happy. So these 3 questions made me conclude 2 things. 1, the system in which we operate is exploitative and leaves people behind feeling alone and disillusioned because we confuse desires and needs. And 2, I want to change it, and I'm going to change it. So there's many things that you can do, of course, luckily. So I came up with a vision. And the vision is I want to empower people to be happy and feel valued for who they are. And I want to make sure that our system is not exploitative and we don't waste any materials. So I got involved with Xtax. And Xtax is an idea originated by Eckert Winson in the early 1990s. And it says we should shift from taxing labor to taxing resources. And as I told you before, resources are becoming scarce. So for all the products that we use in our lives, for all the energy that we generate, transportation, we use resources. They're becoming scarce physically, politically, or economically, either way. Humans, on the other hand, are becoming abundant. We're going towards 9 billion people in 2050. And at the moment, labor is very expensive. So in a crisis, people are the first to get laid off. But resources, on the other hand, are cheap. Think of the €1 stores, about the products you buy there, and they break down in 2 weeks. So what if you would switch these incentives? What if you would make labor more affordable and tax resources? And I'll give you an example of how it is now, and that's actually about the toaster, and that's actually how my journey started. So I had a toaster, like many of you, and one day it broke down, of course, just outside warranty, so I was like, okay, I want to have it repaired. Looking up Google, okay, find a place to have it repaired. Finally find this tiny place in Amsterdam. So I bike there, go there with my toaster, walk in, there's this old guy behind the counter, and he's like, I'm like, can you fix the toaster for me? And he's like, yeah, I'll have a look. So he's looking at the toaster. yeah, I can help you fix it. It's going to cost you 75 euros. What? 75 euros? I can buy 5 new toasters of that. And that is because labor is so expensive and resources are dirt cheap. So, as I am in no intention of starting a toaster business at all, I said I'm very sorry, and then I bought a new toaster. But what if you would switch that? Then resources become more expensive. So designers would have an incentive to start designing differently, so you could actually reuse the resources. Also, to use resources sensibly, not make a golden toilet brush that nobody uses. If labor becomes more affordable, repair and recycling becomes more affordable, because now it's very labor intensive. But it goes beyond repair and recycling. Think of healthcare. Think of that there could be more doctors. There could be better elder care. There could be better care of disabled people. The education system, classes could be smaller, could be more privatized, it could be more personalized. And also, I was thinking about what made me happy. All these services, all these things that people that made me happy, maybe now I can take the massage once a week instead of once every year. I don't know what makes you happy. Maybe a personal trainer, maybe a personal chef. It all becomes possible. So, as I'm doing research for this, I come across numbers every day. And one number that I came across is that we annually waste $2 trillion worth of materials. $2 trillion worth of materials in the world every year. Crazy. So why are we not making use of that opportunity? And I started investigating that. And that is how I came up with this. I took a systems perspective, because closing loops of resources crosses boundaries of individual companies. It goes throughout a whole system. It crosses everywhere around the world. You have to take a systems perspective. And I started looking into why companies did not make use of that opportunity. And the reason is a lack of information. They have no idea where their resources come from, no idea what the quality is. Maybe the designer looked into that, but that's about it. And let alone that they have any idea what a neighboring company is producing in waste streams and whether they could use that as input. So I came up with something called a resources passport. And it's a system, it's like a Google for materials that shows you where the resources come from, what the quality of the resources is, the quantity, how they're combined in a product, what the production processes were, what the value is, how you can reuse it or recycle it, stuff like that. And it has many, many benefits all across the supply chain. So for a designer or a producer, you would actually know whether you're using a resource that is scarce or whether you're using a resource that comes from an area where there's conflict. You don't want to use that, so you can start making changes. Consumers, now you'd actually know whether you're buying a product that contains materials that come from a conflict zone. Now you know whether you're buying a product that includes toxic materials or chemicals that are not necessary. You choose to buy another one if you find it important. And for recyclers, now you know what production processes are used, what materials are in there, and what the value of these materials is, and then you can make a cost-benefit analysis. Do I actually want to recycle that or not, even given the fact that labor is still expensive? So all these things actually enhanced my vision, and I'm not saying that we should stop consuming, I'm just saying that we should shift the framework in which we consume, and consume in a different way. And in that way, there is no waste. We could enjoy nature, and people are happy and feel valued for who they are. So for me, it started with a broken toaster. And I wonder what your broken toaster is. Thank you.
The magical moment of conducting, which is you go onto a stage, there's an orchestra sitting,